Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Percentile Vice. I'm Steve, sometimes Rick, always Rick Stevens, PI on that other thing. What is it? Twitter. That's Emily. That's John. And we are joined tonight by our favorite creator, PVincent Rudolph. PV,
Hello.
to all the people that know him. How you doing, PV?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on board.
Thanks for joining us. So we just realized right before the stream that it was almost exactly a year ago that
we timed this out really well.
So we have determined that this will now be officially named our second annual PV interview.
Exactly.
All right.
So PV, tell everybody who you are, where they can find you. Let's get that stuff out of the way, and then let's start talking about Street Wolves.
PV or Vincent or Paul Vincent or Paul, whatever you want to call me, it doesn't matter. I am a TTRPG creator. I made Street Wolves, as two of our shirts indicate that we like it.
Yours is easier to read. Mine is like...
Yeah. You gotta go with the purple.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, the contrast is fine. It's the terrain mine has to cover. It's a little difficult.
Well, you can always order another one.
There we go.
Nice plug. So smooth.
You can find me on Twitter at, TableCatGames, or the website TableCatGames.com, Instagram, pretty much anywhere except like TikTok, because I'm too old for that. But anywhere the old folks are, I'm on
Steve
Facebook.
Quietly deletes his TikTok app. Too old.
I just this is how much I like you guys, is you're the first live thing I've done. So just so you know,
wow,
you're special.
Yeah, and so a year ago, you were the first interview we ever did. And I believe this was the first, year ago was the first interview you ever gave. Is that true?
Aside from job interviews, that is correct. Yeah.
Right.
This is much more stressful.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's amazing how far we've both come in a year. Like, you have gone leaps and bounds in the TTRPG creating. And we've taken like maybe 1.5 baby steps forward. We still can't figure out how to start a stream. No. But do you remember how much angst there was in that first interview? Like, I had 3 pages of notes. We had a call a week ahead of time.
He was so stressed. So stressed. He was like, do I have enough questions?
That didn't come across at all. I thought you were professionals and you had done it a bunch of times. I didn't pick up on that at all. I did like the pre-interview though, which was really cool. So, I didn't need one this time because I pretty much, we've played games together. I've played with Emily, right? Once or twice now?
I think twice now. It's hard to keep track.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then, Rick/Steve, you've been at my table a bunch of times. So full disclosure, everyone listening, that, they may be a little biased because we all know each other.
Joke's on you. The people I like the most, I'm the hardest on.
Oh, no.
Just ask either one of these two.
This is going to be that gotcha interview then.
Yeah.
Right. So, full disclosure, a year ago, we had not sat at the same table before and played games together before. But
yeah.
I had just recently gotten on Twitter, and 2 things jumped out at me immediately on Twitter. One was Kerry Smith, Crossroad Games, was hyping up Deadlands. And you were starting to hype up Street Wolves, this retro-futuristic 80s synthwave thing. And I'm like, dude, that is my sweet spot. I can tell you exactly what I was doing in 1987 because I was there. You wouldn't understand.
I would not. I was not alive.
I was there too, but I was smaller.
So
stature.
I was just like psyched about the game, and then when the Jumpstart came out, jumped on it, and we ended up playing it. I think we were the first actual play of one of your Jumpstart.
I often say that.
I know, and I appreciate that. And
I'm sure it helps you none.
I put it.
Helps
I
us.
think it's on my. If you go to the TableCatGames itch for Street Wolves, I believe it's embedded now there. So I put the Crossroad Games AP on there, and then the Percentile Vice one on there. So if somebody's just looking at the itch page, they can play either one and get an idea. See, it's really helpful
Nice.
and I would say this to any fellow creator out there, if you can get an AP done, help promote it, because it promotes your work too.
And then you put the link on your website, so people are thinking, do I want this game or not? They can go watch somebody play it real quick.
But if you do a bad job, then I'm tanked. So.
Right, then you don't put a link on your website.
Right.
So a lot of people have, I say a lot, there have been several actual plays of Street Wolves since that time. So which one is your favorite, and why is it Percentile Vice?
I'll say this. I always say that I really enjoyed yours because it stuck more to the real personal nitty-gritty. Especially with just two of you being investigators, it felt more like that kind of cop show thing. So it was more along the lines of Miami Vice. That's why I really liked it about it, is it didn't really go super over the top or anything. It was more, and plus you also did the included adventure of the jumpstart, so that's also really handy too, because then it, if a GM wants to see, well, what is this going to be like, then they can watch it and see people go through it. So
I just want to tell you how big of an impact Street Wolves had. That me and John play a game. We play Call of Duty, like, in our spare time, and there is a skin for, like, a vehicle, like it's an old style Jeep, that is, like, purple with, like, streaks of, like, pink and yellow, like, very synthwave. And John bought it, and he's like, Street Wolves, and he refused to change it for months. He got a new skin the other day. He was like, I really like it, but I'd have to take off Street Wolves. And I was like, oh man. He's like, damn. Like, months he used it. Like, that's how much of an impact it had on John.
that's awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I do really enjoy the street level sort of feel to the game as compared to when you're playing something like Call of Cthulhu. It's like a universal threat. I kind of enjoy that Street Wolves brings it down, and it is a little grittier and a little more personal.
Oh, definitely.
You could make it big if you wanted to, but my whole goal with the design and everything was it should be that lower level, at least to start with, for a long while. If you want to have a campaign that builds and builds and builds, that's okay. But I really, the thing, even when I watch a superhero movie, I like the superhero movies that aren't, here's the big world-ending thing. It's, the villain has some sort of plan, but it's not to destroy the Earth. That's the kind of superhero thing I enjoy.
So we started off with the jump start, and then you spent some time adding to it all and really putting a lot of heart and soul into the full core rule book that recently came out. When did it release, PV?
See, my memory's so bad.
A day that
February 2nd or something. Yeah, I think it was February 2nd or somewhere along there. It was early February. Oh no, it was February 6th, because I think that's when I had the launch party for it.
That is correct. I had the notes over here. This was the gotcha part of the
you're trying to see.
You're wrong. It was the 6th. When the Jumpstart came out, it was like amazing art, great adventure, really good stuff in there. Just the whole look and feel of the thing was amazing. It's just beautiful, right? And then the core rule book came out, and you like took it up a whole nother notch, right? Talk about some of the things you did to visually make the book so appealing.
I tried to be really focused on what the look was and how I could achieve it within the budget that I had. So it was a lot of selective looking for stock elements and then trying to alter them to the idea I had of what it should look like in my mind. And then it was also commissioning work from very talented artists that also could do that sort of thing working with them and giving them reference photos. So if you go, I don't know how you find people on Pinterest, but there is a TableCatGames Pinterest out there that has a Street Wolves folder where I would just spend a lot of time, grabbing items that I thought would fit that world and just dumping them into different categories. And then a lot of times I would share those images with artists. So that was, one way I kind of kept on track for making it look cool, is finding all these cool things. And then it was also looking into graphic design and, what works in a book, and looking at other role-playing game books, and, just trying different things and, hoping it worked. I got a little more creative towards the end, where I would incorporate images and then have text going around them, or text overlapping certain things. And I think going forward, I'm going to be doing a lot more of that. So that was really fun, is growing as a graphic designer and discovering that you could kind of merge the visual elements with the text and still make it readable.
It's kind of convenient that you are so good at design, because you didn't have to pay a designer and could put that money back into hiring the actual artists. So it worked out.
Yeah, I will say there are better designers than me out there.
I disagree.
But well, thank you very much. I'm gonna start turning red. That's not a red light filter. It's my face. I think a lot of that was my practice as being a web designer and having some graphic design and doing some projects in the background and just trying to develop an eye for it, and then applying that as I learned. So the Jumpstart was really good because it was kind of like the practice run of how do I do this and have these certain components work, and then I just build on that with the core book. I'll say though that when it comes time, and maybe we can talk about this later, like future plans, when it comes time to do the print run of Street Wolves, I kind of want to go in and redo a lot of it. So a part of the creating a print ready PDF would also be doing a bit of moving things around, making it look even better based on what I've learned since then.
And so the book is, I mean, the beauty is there, right? Just the dark look to it, the contrast of the color. So beauty, nailed it. But also, you put a lot of work into utility, right? I love having a book in my hand when I'm reading, I'm learning a game. When I go to play the game, I love having the PDF because I can quickly search it and find a rule while we're playing rather than flipping through pages. So I like having both.
Yeah.
But you've made that PDF very, I don't even know what the right term for it is. In my mind, it's very interactive, right? I can go to the table of contents, click on a chapter, boom, it takes me to that. You've got the listings on the sides of the pages of the book, kind of like tabbed out, and I can click on one of those tabs and it'll immediately jump to the place that I'm looking at. It's very
integrated, user-friendly.
Yeah. So that looked like it was a lot of work, maybe.
Well, so that kind of came out of my web design thing, where I do a lot of user interface and UX and that sort of thing, but also stealing from other creators. So Titan Effect had those little tabs on it, and I thought, that's a great idea. I'm going to take that. And then, so there was that, and then you learn that you could do internal linking, so might as well put links, on your table of contents, just get you somewhere. And then I did put bookmarks in the PDF after release because, and here's a scoop, I was looking at the Savage Battle Worlds listing on TTRPG, and somebody was really complaining about there not being bookmarks, and I thought, oh no, I should add bookmarks because I don't want somebody to
Noted.
Yeah, so then I went in and I learned how to do those. And then I added them. I think I added them to the Jumpstart. Maybe, I don't remember exactly, but I did add them and uploaded it with bookmarks. So anything that can be helpful, I'm trying to implement. I would love to have an index at the end, but I still haven't quite learned how to do that yet.
Indexes are a nightmare. Like any book I've seen, like indexes are either awesome or terrible.
And that's why I'm a little worried about, because like at least with the electronic version you have these other tools
Right.
and then control find or control F, but when it comes to the print I may need one.
Yeah.
So
All right, so almost somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 weeks ago, the full core rule book came out, and you have already hit copper bestseller on drive-through-RPG. That's not the only place, though, it's available, right? They can get it several places.
So you can get it on my site, my own website. That version you can just buy it, and I'm kind of working out now how to give people updates a little bit easier if they buy from that website. And it seems like the people that buy from my website are people that know me more. I don't know how to say that. It's usually people that are like friends or something. They want to support me. They'll buy it directly from the website. But I figured now that I think I'm going to try to implement giving everyone that buys from the website a free copy on itch so they can just get the updates. And speaking of itch, you can get it on itch. And I love itch. They take almost no money out of your pocket. And then drive-through-RPG, on the other hand, takes a big chunk.
Yeah.
So even though the site's cool from the user perspective, as at least being able to have a library of stuff and being able to find, because itch has a lot of problems, I'll say, from a user where the discoverability is horrible. Like there's no, you like this, you might like this, their search isn't very good. So I'm sorry this is turning into a rant, but
that's fine.
So one thing I discovered was drive-through is good. And here's for TTRPG creators out there. At least for me, drive-through seems to be good for a long tail effect, where it's out and people will find it and they'll get it. Whereas itch in my website is just that initial group of people that like you and your thing.
Right.
They'll hit it, get it, and then nobody's going to discover it really randomly on those sites. It's probably going to be on drive-through. So.
Yeah, so itch is for people who are looking specifically for your product. Drive-throughs
it seems
for
to be the way, yeah.
people who might discover it on their own through other stuff. Yeah, I got you.
They might buy,
something comparable.
Right. I just said, Titan Effect or Savage Battlelords, it'll say on the bottom, people who you bought this, you might, other people bought these other things. And I'm still, which is nice, if you go to drive-through and you click on the rules of Savage Worlds and you look at the hottest Savage Worlds titles, I was at least number 7 on that list. Nice. But that's another place that you can discover it, right? If I'm in a Savage Worlds and I'm on this site, itch doesn't really have, it has like a popular and a new tab, but it doesn't really have like these recommendations. So I'm really taking itch to task now, but
yeah.
Well, it is great. Like I could tell you from a user standpoint, the only time I go to itch is when there is a creator who's created something that I want to go get, and they have provided me with a link. And I click that link, it goes straight to, I've never searched around on itch because I've only clicked a link that took me right to the product that I wanted to buy. So,
and what I'm trying to do as a creator is on the bottom of itch, or on the TableCatGames page, there's the collections that I own. So I'm trying to put in other creators I like. There's stuff there, so if you just happen to see my thing, maybe you'll buy something from them.
Right.
But
creating your own discoverability.
Right, exactly.
All right, so the game, set in the 80s, retro-futuristic, right? What does that mean? Because they sound like competing terms.
So it takes place in 87, but there's things in it that aren't of the 80s exactly. So, I always say video phones and VR are probably the most obvious things, because, VR didn't really, it became this big thing in the 90s, even though it barely worked and it was super expensive, but it was in all the TV shows and Lawnmower Man and all those things. So I kind of, instead of being in the 90s, I put that in the late 80s, with the mind that technology is kind of moving forward a little bit quicker. But there's other stuff in there that, I might not have really emphasize too much, but like GPS or those kinds of systems that, they were, almost nobody had them, but in this world, maybe somebody might have something a little more complicated, like a heads-up display in their car or something like that.
Awesome. So looking through the core book, right? So this setting, it's 80s. It's got a very Miami Vice feel, but and I think that what adds to that is the whole vapor concept, right? Certain cities, because of some kind of accident, could have been terrorism, could have been industrial accident, but a number of major cities around the world have this glowy pastel-like colors. They vary, of vapor that kind of surrounds the city. Kind of adds to the whole look and feel of the world. And there's a lot of things throughout the book where it seems you are trying to build that synthwave Miami Vice type vibe. The ones that I really want to talk about, though, is throughout the book, you give suggestions for songs that folks could use while playing the game.
Just such a nice touch.
So,
I love that.
Yeah, so talk about that, because I was surprised as I went through there. And like, I'm reading the adventure in the book. At the very tail end of the book, there's another added adventure, and like right there, here's some songs you could play during this thing. I want to talk more about montages in a minute, but you mentioned songs again when you talk about montages. So, what was the feeling there as you were putting it all together? And did you have to do a lot of searching out there for songs, or did you just have a bunch of 80 songs stuck in your head?
A little of both. So, obviously, I'm a child of the 80s, so I listened to these songs 10 billion times because, you'd be in the car with your mom or dad or whatever, and it's just the top 40 radio is always playing these songs, so they just get ingrained in you. But I think a lot of it is I enjoy having a more interactive thing with sound effects and music when I do GMing.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to set a certain mood. And so the feelings I feel when I'm hearing a certain song, I think, oh, well, maybe I can recommend that song, for this particular thing. And also it ties into that Miami Vice thing, as Miami Vice was a very musical show. Like, there's so many songs. And it's still amazing to me that, and I won't make this whole thing about Miami Vice, I really apologize. It's amazing to me that they can still release it on different platforms with all the original music, because it's almost all of it's like AAA music titles. It's surprising they have the licensing in order to do that. Some shows they put out and they change all the music because they couldn't get, I don't know, Fall Out Boy or whatever. But there's, all these classic songs, and they really feed into the mood of the show. And because you'd mentioned the vapor and stuff, everything I did was try to reinforce the vibes of the setting. Oh, my monitor is going to turn off automatically if I don't click the button here. Okay. All right. So if music was part of that, so watching Miami Vice, and they have that Phil Collins song when they're driving in their car and they're about to like do something dangerous, I want that at a table if possible. So I'm going to arm you with songs that maybe you can use. And a lot of it I found on my own, but some of it on my Discord. I have a Street Wolves Vibes channel, or is that what it's called, a channel? But thread, whatever. And people can share music, and sometimes people would share songs they found. And, a pal of mine, Jack, would sometimes share, some sort of synthy song. Just like, oh, that's a really good one. I'm going to add that to the playlist. And so a lot of these songs I have a big Street Wolves playlist on Spotify, and I think you can just find, if you search for Street Wolves on Spotify, you should be able to find it. And there's just a ton of songs. It's both modern synthwave and pop songs, and there's some rap, and there's some metal, and just kind of a big mix of all the songs that has run through my head as I've designed the game and thought a lot about it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think I got you off on Miami Vice there. I apologize, but you know what?
Yeah.
When I look at things like the vehicles in the book, I think about like Knight Rider. When I look at some of the weapons and things you put in the book, it reminds me of A-Team. Right? There are a lot of different '80s shows that I just feel influences of when I look through the book.
Sure, there's some of those things come into the book, but that's one thing I always have to tell people is it's not the 80s game. Like, it's not gonna be a super intelligent supercar. It's not. There's a lot of things that kind of overlap a little bit, but a lot of my work was to try to narrow the focus of the game. So if you want to have a Knight Rider type thing, you could, because it's very convenient to set up a game like that. And I actually suggested if there's a section on how to run the game where it talks about, you can have it like how I have it set up, where there's a wolf pack and they get missions and blah blah blah, or you can have it as a corporate sponsor, which would be like basically Knight Industries from Knight Rider, or you could do it kind of like A-Team or the TV show Renegade, where they're on their own and they're just driving around from city to city or getting calls, or like even the Equalizers like that. He's just a guy that he gets requests for help. He doesn't really work for anybody. So I don't know if that answers your questions or not, but yeah, there's like a lot, like a dash of almost everything in there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different elements you put in there that created this whole aesthetic, and I wouldn't try to paint you into a corner with any particular TV shows or whatever. I'm just the kind of things that the book evokes in me and the memories I have from back then.
I will say a future adventure that I want to release on its own would be basically very heavily inspired by Airwolf, where you go and steal a super helicopter. Well, I guess like Blue Thunder was like that too. So, I talk about, well, it's not these 80s shows, but then I'll probably release an adventure later on that's basically
But,
one
like,
of those 80s shows.
With those sprinkling of just a touch, the flavor of some of those shows, it helps like people like me who was not alive in the 80s. All I have is the TV shows to draw from. I have no other context. So it helped me play the game because I was like, no, wait, I've seen that show. I know how this goes.
And that's one reason why I think the music suggestions are important too, because you might not know any of those songs, right?
No, I was raised right. I know those songs.
Well, you were, but
I was raised well. But yeah. Aw.
All right, so you mentioned like the way you run games, right? And I've sat at your table, and you're very heavy on sound effects and music, and it really makes a cool, immersive experience. Love sitting at a table with you because of the effort that you put in there. But
this is how you get more invites.
Right? So. Yeah, I am sucking up like crazy right now. But as I read through the book, excuse me, you have put a whole bunch. Look, a lot of TTRPGs will lay out the setting and they'll lay out the rules, and then there'll be a small little section on, hey, now go play the game. But throughout this book, you've got things that are very helpful for a GM on how to go about getting after certain things. Right? We already talked about. Excuse me, the music, but that section in the book on cold opens is just a genius, I think, right? So talk about it.
Well, I'll just say that I feel like some people might be really against that sort of thing because they're really against metagaming so the way I went about it was I wanted to let you have access to a tool in a TV show's toolbox, but also in a way that keeps it real short and simple, where it doesn't dominate the game or bore players or something. Like, I keep saying, I think I say like a dozen times, just keep it short, right? Just
You do.
don't spend all day on this. Just have like a couple lines, and then and then I did the looking at cold opens on TV shows and try to put them in different types. You can have like, and it's been a while since I've read my own book, so yeah, I don't remember exactly what they all are now.
It's
but,
worth a second read. You should go back through it.
Thank you. But the mysterious stranger one, where like you have a bad guy show up and they are, something's up with them and you don't know, and it just kind of proves that they're a badass. And you could just do that in a paragraph or two to your players. Just set a scene, tell this tiny little micro story, and then yes, they'll know that there's a bad guy after them, but that's cool because it's like how a show that, you're a part of the show, but we're all aware we're playing a game.
Yeah.
If you should be able to separate the fact that, that you're not that character. So, I trust that a lot of groups are able to kind of keep that metagaming separate in their minds while being potentially scared of that, dangerous person coming for them, but then acting like their characters don't know about it.
Right.
At least, I've played a few games, with my own table that they're really good at that sort of thing. So hopefully other tables can too, They don't immediately start like building up their defenses and stuff.
Right.
We know a guy's coming for us.
Nuke.
Yeah.
Well, you lay out several different ways. Like so Emily and John, we could be sitting down to play a game. You got your characters built up. They're agents or the wolf pack, and they're ready to go. But before we actually get into the game, I just draw this little picture for you that it's Central City Park. There's 2 feet sticking out of the bushes that a jogger walks by. He stops. He looks in, and there's the body, throat cut from ear to ear, and a playing card, the ace of spades, laying on his chest. That's it. Right, and then I go back to you. I just made all that up on the spot. It was amazing. I know.
Bravo! I was expecting the Law and Order SVU to pop in any minute.
I was gonna say you hit play on your game's theme song.
Right.
Boom. You hit them with it, and then you can start the game.
It's perfect.
Like it's really cool. And another thing I suggest
is a sneaky hook, right? It's
or giving a couple lines to your players to read, like Jogger 1, Jogger 2, that kind of thing.
It's hard the first couple like sessions to feel like immersed in the game, and I feel like that kind of tactic is almost like a shock treatment. Like, bam, you're here now, and it feel like it just pushes you into that situation.
Right. So we cut over to you guys. You're nowhere near the park. You're nowhere near the body. But now, if I'm trying to put, I've already set this little hook, right?
Yeah.
Part of the hard part of playing these games is getting the players to take the hook in. But when you're sitting there, no matter what happens, when I say, okay, here we are at Wolfpack headquarters, you're thinking, eventually we're going to get around to that body with the ace of spades behind the bushes. So I really like the idea. And then you give like several tables and examples and suggestions of different types of cold opens. What do you think, Em?
Yeah. I think it's amazing. And, we have my actual play, and now I'm trying to think of ways that I can use that on you guys. Because I use montages in my game already. When it's like, nothing important's going to happen, but I want you to get the vibe of what's going on, and we're going to cut to the whole next day. Like, I use montages, but cold opens, I got to find a way to use that because it's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I use them when testing Street Wolves pretty early on. So there's an adventure that was going to be the included adventure, but I swapped it out because it was way too long and complicated, and it'll probably see the light of day some other time, but it involves basically bad guys showing up to kidnap a person. So the players, they'll know that the person, something happened to them. They know bad guys showed up to their door, but they don't know what. Right. So when they go to the apartment, that is the apartment from the cold open. Let's figure out if they're alive or dead or what. So
I love it. I think it's great.
So you got something, John? Look like you're about to say something.
Not necessarily about that.
Go for it.
But
I was going to change subjects anyway. You go.
Okay. You mentioned earlier the concept of vapor, and I enjoyed how when you were talking about it on the Reckless Attack podcast, you mentioned that it was sort of, you were looking at these album covers and trying to figure out, how do I get my game to look like this? I really enjoyed that. But I also enjoyed the way that mechanically it's very subtle. It can be a little more, you could ramp it up if you wanted to, but it doesn't take away from the street level feel of it. And I thought it was pretty brilliant how you put that in there, and it gives it another angle and doesn't take away from the overall feel of things as being, still kind of a detective thing, not.
Yeah.
So this overpowering, like,
Yeah.
ethereal force above your head. It's.
Did you ever worry about it being a little OP when you were coming up with
I was worried
it?
about it be dominating the game, because at first I just wanted it to be the, investigative, heroes on the edge kind of stuff. But then I thought, well, there may be people out there that want a little more oomph or some sort of cool magical thing or something. And how do I accommodate for that? And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to, if I included that sort of thing, then I'm going to put it in a box of sorts of, well, here's the thing, but here are all the drawbacks that go along with it.
Right.
So if you pick, and I actually commented on a Reddit thing, somebody was talking about they were nervous about all their players wanting to be vapor enhanced or whatever. And I said, yeah, but as a GM, if you tell them, well, here's the negatives, it's hard to use in the day, it's hard to use outside of the city, you have to be covered up in the sunlight, there's going to be people looking for you that want to experiment on you or use you as a tool or something. So there's these guardrails on it to kind of make it so it doesn't become an X-Men game or
Right.
Something like that, where, and I've had a lot of tests. I don't know how many people, like dozens of people, have played it with me, and only like 3 or 4 have ever really wanted to do the vapor thing, and they fed into it really well, where a lot of times they were kind of scared of what they were, or they were in reserve. They didn't really use it because they knew that it brings attention and that sort of thing. So I mean, that another example I guess I would say is I used kind of the Jedi in, I love Star Wars, the Jedi in the Rebellion era, where when we would play Star Wars, the RPG, maybe one of the players or 2 maybe would be Jedi, but not everyone wants to do that. First of all, someone just want to be a Han Solo. And then also, if you're a GM that enforces, okay, well, the Empire is really going to come looking for you as soon as you bust out that lightsaber, it's, and again, you're kind of putting guardrails on it where it's like, I don't know if I want to be hunted, like maybe have a bounty on my head, but not like for extermination, because I can make
There's
things
some checks and
float in the air or
balances.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to have to worry every time a door opens. Is that the Inquisitor?
Yeah, right. So this was more, I think with those, and a GM could just say, well, that's not even in my setting. That's fine. It's up to them. But I feel like I have enough checks and balances in here where it's not going to dominate the entire game.
Right.
And you can get rid of some of that stuff, but it's at like higher levels. So, if you've been playing a while, you can use your powers during the daytime, no problem, right? But you've had to, invest in your advances, one of your advances to do that. So.
Yeah, one of the play tests that I was fortunate enough to do with you, I put the vapor thing in my head and I think I just had a white-haired, pale skin, and really we were really low level, so there was nothing real OP about the vapor sickness, the vapor poisoning this guy had, but for role playing, like I needed to have my sunglasses on. We went outside during the day. I really enjoyed it. But speaking of the play testing, I got a little bit of a PTSD trigger when I scrolled to the end of the book and found that ice cream truck.
Yeah, that I tried to kill you with.
You did.
Spoilers for anybody who hasn't.
Spoilers.
But the only spoiler is there's an ice cream truck.
That tried to kill him.
It did.
He almost got
Yeah.
iced.
It was really, really close. And I've never seen you more disappointed in all the time I've known you,
so
PV.
sad.
You really wanted to kill us, but we.
I'm not a guy that likes to TPK, but if it's during testing,
play testing.
you
Yeah,
know, and it's a
everything's
one
game.
shot, who cares? I'm gonna
Right.
kill
Do
you
it.
if I can.
So that look, I love the game. I loved it on the jump start. I loved it from the concept when you hadn't even released the jump start yet, and I really love what you have done with it. So,
Can I take a minute? Just
Yeah.
one more. One more thing about vapor. I will say that the advantage to being vapor, poisoned or enhanced or whatever, is, and this is a tip for all the players out there, is that if you're on an investigation, you're walking around, you can't have your big machine gun with you. If you can do like a blast that, melts people, just no problem. That's a good thing to have. So like the person with the big machine gun, was like, it's back in the car. It's like, well, you've already got that with your powerful burst of energy or whatever. So that is the one big advantage of the vapor powered player.
Because you're always packing.
Yeah, you're always packing heat.
So I just
make sure nobody sees it.
Right.
That's all.
Secretively.
So I want to just read this incredible review that you got on Drive Through RPG, so the people watching this will understand. It's not just me and the Percentile Vice crew geeking out over your product.
Okay, so you didn't write this review?
I did not. This
Okay.
is Knox S, a verified purchaser, by the way. I've been really interested in this product ever since I saw the Jumpstart. Now, with the fully released version, I can say this book delivers. Great setting rules. My favorite being the drive mechanic and your character relationships and downtown mechanics, which this book calls leave. Those can really give a character an additional amount of depth. And besides, all the mechanics and lore is just aesthetically stylish and badass.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a great review. And
My mom left that review.
your mom did not say badass. But
Be a lot cooler if it was.
right, I agree 100%.
Oh, yeah.
with that.
Hands down.
Thank you.
Aesthetically,
Appreciate it.
the book is just pleasing to look at, and then when you start getting into the setting and the way you developed and aesthetically the world, not just aesthetically the book, but the aesthetics of the world that you built.
It's a whole vibe on its own.
It is so cool.
It is so good.
So,
Thank you.
So, you're not stopping there, are you?
Oh,
You got other stuff coming. What else you gonna do?
That's
What
it.
else
I'm
can I get
done.
excited
I'm
about?
We're
Right.
done. Hands in.
It's like, quit while you're on top.
Hunt to reach
I retire.
perfection. Yeah, that's it. I'm
Perfection.
going out on top. So upcoming. So I've got more Street Wolf stuff, which I'll talk about. The next thing that's probably coming out is not related to Savage Worlds or Street Worlds at all. It's called The Wicked Forever King Hungers. It's a really small RPG that's based on lasers and feelings. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with it. That's a one-page RPG. This is basically using those rules to make kind of this gritty, dark, fantasy type thing. Then I'm going to do a very small Kickstarter to fund the proofreading and have some potential stretch goals for more content and that sort of thing. And also, it's an exercise in learning how to do a Kickstarter before I do the Kickstarter for Street Wolves. So it's gonna, not only I get to practice doing something different than I have been doing, but it's also in anticipation of something else, right? So look for that. Sign up when it has the notify me on launch button. It'll be really cool. I've been doing a lot of so with Street Wolves, I did a lot of that photo bashing or altering stock art. That's essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking really old art from the 1800s, 1700s, that sort of stuff, and kind of doing some stuff to it to make it scarier, adding some cool elements and a little color here and there, and it's going to look really neat. But that's, again, more practice for when I need to do that for Street Wolves again. But I know you're excited about Street Wolves, so I won't talk about that one too long. The next Street Wolves thing that I have on the plate that's currently in progress is Heart of Glass. It's a standalone adventure. I'm working on it with Megan Caves of Gone Rogue Entertainment. So what I'm doing is I'm writing this adventure out. It's a small town, gritty murder mystery. There's all these secrets in this town, and so what it is it's more like the Street Wolves are fish out of water. They, they're not, they might not hang out in small towns that often in the middle of Wisconsin. Usually they're, in Miami or New York or something like that. And there's two other things that make it a little more, well, three things. The Street Wolves also have no backup because when it starts, they've really screwed up. So I even have a table that says everyone makes a spirit or a drive check, right? And if you fail, you lose some, and then you roll on the table to see what the screw up was. If they fail their drive check critically, two bad things happen on the table, which happened in the first test run, which was glorious. Basically, in that one, they injured a civilian and a villain killed an innocent person. So when you start off the Street Wolves, the players, you start in the car as they're driving to this thing they're doing, they're kind of knocked back on their heels. They're all kind of dealing with a little trauma. So there's some things in the table like, even a fellow Street Wolf had been killed, right? Like, so you might have all be in the car thinking about your partner that was just killed. So, it sounds very sad, and it is, and it's awesome. And
awesome to work with Megan Caves too.
So I was just getting to that. She's gonna do some acting and recording of. I'm writing these little cassette tapes and working with her. Is basically the Street Wolves get a cassette tape and they listen to it, and then it's going to have her on it being a character. And then as you go along, you find more of these cassette tapes, and they contain clues, but also background information that kind of helps. Like if you're playing a lot of role-playing games, sometimes you might not even know what's going on, all the machinations in the background. But this kind of highlights it a little bit more, like, oh, here's the things that had happened, and here's who the important people are. So there's a lot of investigation outside of these tapes because it's not a railroad, but even if you know some of this stuff, it's going to be kind of cool to listen to this person talking and maybe giving you a few more details. So and I think so I'm working with Mike Todd, aka Jurassic Todd, on Twitter. Mm-hmm. He's been messing around with the cover, and then might have some cool interior art just a little bit, and hopefully that'll come out in a few months. But like I said, I'm working on the just testing it now, so I have to run through it a few times before.
So just so the old guy here can understand, when I purchase this adventure, I'm going to get sound files with it.
Yes. So Megan has these things called adventure bones already. Like if you look for adventure bones, they're kind of like these loose. I don't know how to say it. It's like a framework or just something that you can build an adventure around. So you buy it, and there's like one that's like I think a lab. I've purchased them, but it's been a while since I listened to them. But there's like a lab that something bad happened, and then you can write your adventure around that, and then you can play the sound clips. That's how I got the idea for this. Was I thought she had a really cool idea. I was like, well, what if we combined, Street Wolves and this Adventure Bones thing into one adventure? So
yeah, it's like Street Wolves Underdogs.
And we would love to maybe put out an actual cassette tape.
Oh,
That's
we'll
all
see
I was
about
hoping.
that.
Was like, I want an actual cassette tape.
Yeah, I was thinking
We'll see
about
how
that
that
too.
goes.
That sounds expensive though.
Like the first 100 people to pre-order get cassette tape.
Well, yeah, we'll see how that works. I know there's a company that you can just have cassette tapes made, and I've thought about that for Street Wolves itself, was getting some synthwave artists to do maybe a mixtape and just releasing a tape. But
You can get super
you know.
niche and do 8 tracks.
that's a little Street
Pre-80s.
Wolves though. Yeah.
But you guys just caused a big flashback for me. Like the first personal stereo thing that I owned was this Panasonic cassette player, and it was like red and round shape. The handle was part of it, and just little speakers on the sides. Yeah. Late 70s, early 80s, and that was it. It's like my own little personal boom box. Walk around, took D-cell batteries, so most of the time it didn't work at all, right? Because your parents buy you this thing, but they won't keep you stocked up with batteries. So it was before rechargeable batteries. But yeah, I just remembered that as you were talking about releasing cassettes. I'm like, well, people are gonna have to go get cassette players. Go to, the antique store or something and pick up and it popped into my head.
Did it hurt when you thought about cassette players at the antique store?
Yeah, a little bit. It's painful.
Well, I'm kicking myself because I had a dual deck cassette player component for like a stereo rack, but I got rid of it because I was like, who needs this? And
cassettes are dead.
I think we have one thing we got from Goodwill that plays cassettes. But so now I'm going to have to start looking through Goodwills again so I can find something better. But so
even if it's not a functional cassette, just like a decorative cassette, I'd be okay with. Just want to put up on my wall.
That's I assume is some people would get it just because they could have it and not actually play it, right?
Because like the cases for cassettes have like the really cool like wraparound, like that would be so cool. Sorry, I'm off track here.
We'll see if I can afford the wraparound part.
Yeah, you could sell it with the maintenance pack, a pair of tweezers and a pencil.
Yeah, right.
All right, what other stuff are you working on? And if you don't know which one I want you to talk about next, I'll tell you.
All right. Well, yeah. So we're working on potentially a Foundry module for VTT stuff. Ooh. I'm working with a high school student named Rushel, who's a really cool kid. I used to work with his mom, and but he's still in high school, so work is proceeding slowly on that as we'll meet and talk about it. And he's super intelligent, but the thing is this is like this completely foreign thing for both of us, so we have to do a lot of research on what do we have to do, like what do we need. We made some strides so far. So I just got a Foundry account and I was setting everything up in there. And so, I demoed to him like, oh, this is what, because he doesn't play role-playing games. So then that was a step, is like, okay, so this is what you see when you play a role-playing game. Like it's all voice, but you can have maps and blah, blah, blah. And I think he has a robotics club thing this weekend, but then he's starting spring break soon, so hopefully we'll make some more progress on that. But he's great to work with so far.
Nice.
Those are the main things right now. So go ahead, ask me about anything beyond that.
Robots, future.
Oh, the future war. So that's on the back burner. It's a mini setting heavily inspired by the Terminator. Hopefully I don't get sued for saying that. Heavily inspired by the Terminator. And it's a mini setting, meaning it doesn't really have a lot to it. It just has enough if you wanted to run Savage Worlds in a future war world where there's robots out to kill you. Here's the stats for the robots. Here's how the humans have set up things. I get into some details of different types of there were like 3 different professions essentially. So you could be just a civilian or part of the military, or the third one was like gangs that gather together to survive. And what those different factions want and how they work, but not like Street Wolves details where there's like a 130-page book, but it's more just to give you the tools to run something like that, because I really enjoy Terminator and all the other games that take place in the future with, or all the other movies that take place in the future with killer robots. The knockoffs, I guess, would be. But I think that's a setting that is very limited, so therefore that my setting would be very small too, because it's like, how long can you play as a struggling person on the verge of extinction? You know, I don't know how long.
Depends on how lethal the robots are.
Well,
they're very lethal.
They're not long.
Very. So just kind of on a whim, PV took the Savage World set of rules, threw some stuff on top of it, and him and I and a couple of friends, we just played this Killer Robots of the Future. I had a blast. I'm like, you know, and it was just kind of on a whim, right? It's like, well, let's see if we can throw this on a Savage World mechanics, and it worked out really well.
One of my favorite things was the naked. Oh, that guy was naked, right? Like he comes. There was a big explosion. He walks out and he says, "I am a human resistance soldier."
Right.
You know, like he just kept insisting that he was one of you. And even after like half of his skin was gone, he was claiming to be.
This invention is very human.
Yeah. I'm a very normal human.
Very normal human.
That was a really fun part of the game. The worst part of that game was that my lost love that I'd been searching for throughout the whole adventure turns out is a robot.
Dun, dun,
which is weird because we did things.
Right.
Wow.
We don't know the backstory of that though, so
and I really don't want to know.
I'm just telling you.
We still have to play that through. So.
Yes, I just had a blast with that. So even as a more of a smaller undertaking than Street Wolves, I'd love for you to do something like that. I think a lot of people have
I feel like this whole little segment was not like part of the interview. This was you just very trying to casually just like, so
can we
play that again?
That was it. I'm busted.
Shameful.
Yeah, I think as I knock some of these other things, so Wicked Forever King Hungers is one of the big ones, and then, you know, the VTT and this adventure. So I had released a plan during my launch party where there was probably 8 things on it. And so the robot one was definitely on the list. It's just like number 6, right? You know, it's I got to get through these other things before I get back to that. So
it sounds epic. I'm excited for that.
Oh, sorry. So I got one more question for you, PV. If you were me and I was you, what question would me ask you, because you really want you to know what me think about it?
I'm really confused.
I literally don't know. This is I'm just
okay. So basically, what question would you have wanted us to ask you that we didn't?
Right, but if you get this question correct, then there's a new edge, and what are the bad things called again?
Hindrance.
Right. It's the insane logic. It can be either an edge or a hindrance,
depending on how you play.
Yeah. Insane logic. No, I mean, I don't really have. I mean, you guys have asked me a lot of questions that I like, so I mean, I've got to throw some plugs in there, talk about my stuff. You know, that's always valuable.
Well, it is a great book.
Yeah.
It is obvious how much work you put into it, and
thank you.
It's a lot of fun to play. Would love to, you know, hopefully nobody beats us to the punch, but maybe we could be the first actual play of the included adventure in the core book.
I'm going to cross my fingers for you.
But don't turn anybody down if they say they want to play it.
Yeah. I like both kinds of actual plays. I like ones that are all original, because it's fun to see what somebody's interpretation of the thing is. But I also like the actual plays that do the published material, because that's one thing that I would watch when I was thinking about running Delta Green games was, well, what happens in it, you know, and then you can watch. And then the alternate is, if you've played through it, then you can watch another group do it and see what they've done differently than you.
Oh, you
Which
weren't
I always
supposed to
enjoy
kill
'cause
that
it's
guy.
like, yeah, exactly. You're like, wait, that was behind that door?
We
I
didn't even
know
go in that room. Damn it.
Exactly. So,
They didn't even have one jet ski scene. Like, this is not a good actual play.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the water chase scene.
That's my favorite thing we've done in the last year, easily.
Well, hey, PV, thanks for joining
Yes,
us
sir.
and talking us through the creation process and letting us just geek out with you on the cool things that are in this book. Tell everybody again where they can find you, where they can go buy this thing, and any of your socials
Well,
you
you
want to
can-
share.
You can find me on the degrading social media site Twitter, TableCatGames. There's also the website TableCatGames.com where you can buy the book, or you can get it on Itch or Drive-Thru RPG. So.
And there's also a mailing list on TableCatGames.com.
Oh, see, you know what? I'll
Good
give you a
plug,
Benny
John.
for that. Yeah,
Benny.
you get an extra
Get a
Benny.
Benny.
Yeah, if you join the mailing lists, I'll be eternally grateful and love you forever, because it's so good to have a mailing list. Like I said, Twitter's degrading, and some social media sites might get shut down by the US government, or you don't know what's happening. As long as you have your own mailing list, it's like, okay, I have this core group of people that are very special to me that I can send little messages and say, hey, check this thing out, or here's a discount or something like that. So
I highly
Plus, if you-
encourage getting on the mailing list because you are very judicious with your use of that mailing list. Some mailing lists you get on, and it's like every day there's something in there. You're very deliberate and judicious about the use of it, so it doesn't get spammy. It's like when you get something,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I want to see what's
Right.
TableCat Games got
cultivated.
going now. So
I'm trying to limit it to sales notices, like, oh, there's a sale on this thing, or mostly, here's a new thing coming up or is out right now. And also, if you join the mailing list, you get access to the Bubbles archetype, as played by Cassie Mothwin on the Crossroads AP. So if you are a completist and need all the Street Wolves things that are available out there, then join the mailing list. You can get, it's listed on my website because there's like a technical thing where it's listed on my
$500.
website for $500. And if you want to pay $500, I will revenue share that with Carrie and Cassie. But you can also get 100% discount by joining the mailing list.
100% discount. You can't beat that.
Yeah.
off a
You
$500
can't beat
product.
It's get one free, get one
It's a
free.
$500 value. So
That is awesome. Any parting comments or questions, John or Emily?
I want to play Street Wolves.
Yeah,
I'm all
yeah.
jazzed up now.
So I wanted to ask you about taxes because we all know that's why we're here.
No.
And
No. Roll the
I didn't have
cutscenes.
to pay. I'll just say I didn't have to pay any this last year's taxes because I didn't sell anything really. It's this next set of taxes that I'm like really nervous about. So
Well, I hope that you have to pay a lot of taxes.
That's
because you're
Well, that would have mean you
'Cause
made
you're
a
a
lot of
patriot, right?
revenue.
oh
You
okay. I
made
thought
a
you
lot of
meant
revenue.
it would help the economy and the government.
No, I
No,
want
none
you
of
to
that.
bust into higher and higher tax brackets because of how wonderful the
very
game
much.
is
Straight up.
and everybody's buying it. All right, thanks everybody for joining us. We are Percentile Vice. Our special guest, PVincent of TableCatGames, the creator, author, producer, designer, and everything of Street Wolves, the tabletop role-playing game. Go check out. It is awesome. Thanks, everybody.